understand if not. Okay, welcome to the first Alta Mesa Center for the Arts reading for 2022. It's almost hard to say. It seems so distant in my mind since 2020 happened and then 2021, and I don't know where the world is now. I do know that I'm thrilled today to be able to host three wonderful writers, Lillian Howan, Maw Shein, and Angelica Barcelona, who are Asian American Pacific Islanders, but also just tremendous artists that I've had a chance to get to know both through their work and speaking with them in the last several weeks. I'll introduce Alta Mesa Center for the Arts. I'll do a short introduction of each of our writers, and then I'll turn it over to them and we will enjoy their readings. There will be time at the end for some Q&A, so keep your notes and feel free to use the chat. We may not respond immediately, but we certainly will respond eventually to any questions or comments that you have. So Alta Mesa Center for the Arts is an interfaith arts and spirituality hub housed within and sponsored by Orinda Community Church. It was founded by myself and Elizabeth Robinson, who maybe she'll wave, she's in the audience there. She's the pastor and poet, who, by the way, will be doing the reading for our next reading, which is February, 13th, I think. There's information lower down on the program for all of these new events. Now, at Alta Mesa, we believe that art is a spiritual act and a human right. We wish to provide a place where people from diverse traditions, artistic practices, and economic realities come together in community. We know that art can bridge the divisions, substantive and arbitrary, between us. We come together not only to practice and to teach the arts, but to celebrate and learn from our differences and to foster lively and respectful interdisciplinary dialogues. We seek unity in diversity. And wherever you are on your artistic and your spiritual journey, whoever you are welcome here. I'm going to go ahead and give introductions for each of our artists in the order that they will appear. But we will have some time too at the end to kind of explore more deeply, not only their art, but also the muses, the inspiration that moves them to create. Later in the month, on the 22nd, these artists will be with us again with a workshop that's designed to kind of introduce you to your muses. And if you are a writer or have ever thought about being a writer, it would be a wonderful way to kind of jumpstart your artistic practice. Our first reader is Angelica Barcelona. She's a Filipina-American poet based in San Francisco, but originally from New Jersey. She was a U.S. Department of State Fulbright grantee to South Korea in 2014. Her work can be seen in Quiet Lightning, Killing the Angel, Fulbright Korea Infusion, Work to a Calm, and In Between Hangovers, which is a fantastic title. She volunteers at the National Alliance on Mental Illness and is a curator for Kearney Street Workshop's annual APA A Cheer Festival. You can see in the bio in the program that she also has a website that you could check out. I also loved looking at your poems. I Become Food on a Train, that there's a series of 5 poems that were part of the Fulbright Fellowship that are wonderful to check out if you have a chance. Our next reader will be Lillian Howan. Lillian's writing have been published in Asian American Literary Review, Cafe Irreal, Jellyfish Review, the Museum of Americana, New England Review, South Dakota Review, vice versa, and in various anthologies. And her debut novel, which is this tremendously layered and beautiful piece of work, called The Charm Buyers, was published by the University of Hawaii Press. It's really worth checking out if you have a chance to do it. Maw Shein has several poetry chapbooks, including Ruins Are a Glittering Palace, Score and Bone, and her most recent book, Storage Unit for the Spirit House, which you can find in a link down below, also on the program. She's been long listed for the 2021 PEN America Open Book Awards, and she often collaborates. She's wonderful to collaborate with. If you ever have a chance to do so, please do. Now I get to be quiet and step aside and allow our first reader, Angelica Barcelona, to grace us with her presence.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, everyone, for being here on this Sunday afternoon. You can see I have the spotlight on me, so hopefully you can still see me. So when January rolls around each year, I often associate it with the first time I had ever visited the Bay Area back in 2014. And I was visiting the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive at UC Berkeley to do research on a Korean American performance artist named Teresa Cha. This is her book, Dictée. When I was writing my thesis, I was really drawn to her work because of the way she tells stories about families that get disrupted by war, imperialism, dislocation. So in studying her work, I found a lot of parallels in that with my own family and how they were disrupted by death and migration, natural disasters. So today I'll be sharing poems honoring my family and our identity. But before that, I do want to share the last paragraph of Dictée with you all. Lift me up, Mom, to the window, the child looking above, too high above her view, the glass between some image, a blur now, darks and grays, mere shadows lingering above her vision, her head tilted back as far as it could go. Lift me up to the window, the white frame and the glass between, early dusk or dawn when light is muted, lines yield to shades, houses carry shadow pools in the passing light, brief, all briefly towards night. The ruelle is an endless path turning the corner behind the last house. Walls, hives of stone, by hand each by each harbor the gold and reflect the white of the rays. There is no one inside the pane and the glass between. Trees adhere to silence in attendance to the view to come, if to occur, in vigilance of lifting the immobile silence. Lift me up to the window, to the picture image, unleash the ropes tied to weights of stones. First the ropes, then it's scraping on wood to break stillness as the bells fall, peal, fall the sound of the ropes holding weight, scraping on wood to break stillness. Bells fall, appeal to the sky. So my first poem is called Tatay and Lola, Who Went Too Quickly. I've been to the places where my father started, where brother after brother ended, where their hearts suddenly stopped, a heart clog, arteries choking on their own drumming, sternum stretched taut until they snapped before 45. From my father's veins, into my father's mother's heart. Their deaths are 2 weeks apart. My 9-year-old father is orphaned. He turned 70 this year. He has outlived his whole family. I've been to the center of where my mother began, where twins are common and uteri fall out after childbirth. My mother's mother slipped out of the urn to ask, do you want to join me? Her mother, barely 3 years into her body, said yes. Her living sister said no, let our mother go. Every home housed a Santo Niño de Cebu, childlike Christ, arms outstretched, the opposite of a prayer. Our voices hushed. May their souls and all the souls of these women say back to us, amen, amen, it is over. This next poem, I have been a huge fan of Natalie Diaz, and she came out with a post-colonial love poem. And this poem was inspired by her own poem, Manhattan is a Lenape Word. December, after Natalie Diaz. It is December and we must be brave. In the twinkling lights of the city by the bay, I can see where the inlets stop the power supply. The city's howling bridge, what the engineers call an aerodynamic phenomenon. Golden hue majestic enough to disguise the suicide nets below. The tree, always fake until this year, drops its needles and clutches the wind-long hardware store string lights. I braid wicks and pour wax into yogurt containers, sift through magazines and slice dancers away from their stage. The things I know aren't easy. a sibling neck deep in conspiracy theories, a father nauseous to the touch, a mother in N95 masks every night. I curate a found family in my adulthood. I fly 6 hours and visit the house on Lavender Drive. The neighborhood streets are full of namesakes: wintergreen, azalea, periwinkle, honeysuckle, ivy, oak, boxwood. What was once a small crack in the sidewalk erupted with weeds. How can I call this a home if nobody says we need to let go of what we never had? If we are what we love, what does love look like unreturned? It's not me. I spread love with my tongue licking envelopes, which is why I still write letters and buy postcards from every state. The first incandescent light bulb illuminated my hometown, a little known fact by people who still live there. This is why I dread going to Stop and Shop or Dunkin' Donuts, where I am no longer nameless in front of my classmate's kid. What is happiness if not the absence of natural disasters, a lack of power outages and reliable clean water? I open entire drawers full of hospital soap bars and inkless pens and beg my mom to throw them out. But in Cebu, the kids will need this. I read about Typhoon Rai and how it chewed up then spit out their houses. We heat our food on scratched up Corel dishes, then transfer it to the dishes from a casa with gold trim. Once I made a plate spark like lightning in the microwave. I feel like that sometimes, breakable, explosive. In between spoonfuls of sinigang, my dad asked me again, "Why are you still afraid to drive?" Meaning, what did we do wrong? As if her picture still isn't on my wall, the headline fresh: young dancers in speeding car leave a long trail of grief. The cloudless sky beckons the street lamp to turn on. It hiccups until it offers a path from Lavender Drive toward Wintergreen Avenue, winnowing through the neighborhood to feed the mouth of the Garden State Parkway. Somewhere far from Ilaya to Manhug, Cebu, an American family cleans up the dinner table, saran wrapping leftover kari-kari and steak. The placemats sticky with vinegar. Read, "There's no place like home." And for this last poem I want to share with you all, last year was really tough for a lot of reasons, but definitely when the attack started on the AAPI community, it really affected me, and it affected a lot of folks around. So I ended up writing this poem in response to some of my feelings there. Asian girl wants to see. I am short, like the dirty fingers of your hand. I am infantilized. I am fetishized. I am bold like a brush stroke. I am ornamental like a holiday. I am the seasoning to your longing. Langka, laing, bangus, bagoong, sinigang, sisig, kamayan. You say you come from conquistadors, the product of rape, the product of imperialism, the product of pity. The ships were sailing in from all directions to mail our women as brides to be. I was born and bred in this country. You say you don't have an accent. I wonder which one you're expecting. My parents pushed me away with their absence. The balikbayan box sits in our living room. I fell on my face so I could wait for them at home. My scarred lip needed balm, so my dad mailed it without coming home. I asked for a toy on the phone. My dad asked, "What kind of toy?" I thought he should know by now. When he came back, I looked for my surprise. He pulled out a doll, a baby with a bottle. I was confused. Why didn't it look like me? It was before I had visited his home country. I thought brown skin was beautiful, but suddenly it wasn't. Later, I went to a warehouse, my mom, my sister, and our nanny, who wasn't supposed to be in this country. My mom said, "Get whatever you want." So we ran through the aisles. She got a raise. I only knew limits before that day. I remember the taste of the minty chocolate sticks, the beaded necklaces, princess tiaras, pink bubblegum tape. I felt lucky carrying 2 trash bags to our car, stuff that was finally ours. When we all lived like a family again, I got introduced to the casinos. I recognized roulette and blackjack. I saw the fishnet tights of the cocktail girls. My dad felt lucky enough to lose what my mom made. I saw old white ladies in wheelchairs smoking in the non-smoking section. They were also losing. Our skin was not the same. I wanted to be Italian. I wanted to be Irish. I wanted to be Polish. I wanted to change my last name, get rid of our oppressors. I wanted to lighten my skin, lighten my hair, blend in with the crowd. I wanted to find my mom, losing in the quarters, sinking deep into slot machines. I wanted to find my dad and see if we were winning. I wanted to be seen, and when I wasn't, I learned to be alone, alone, alone. When I was alone and lonely, you'd be surprised by what I could see. Now my eyes are wider than you'll remember. There are thousands of us gathering in Antioch, New York, San Jose. In this country, we know home. We know ourselves. My dad is from Manila. My mom is from Cebu. I'm an American. What are you? Thank you.
Amen.
And I'll pass it on to Ma.
Dawn, thank you for that powerful reading. Thank you. I want to thank Mary and Elizabeth and Alta Mesa Center for the Arts, and to all of you for joining us today. And I'm so happy to be reading with Dawn and Lillian. So I would like to talk about one of my muses, who is Yoko Ono, interdisciplinary artist, musician, filmmaker, and peace activist. She has been an inspiration for my own art making over the years. And I'd like to read one of her pieces from Acorn, and it's entitled Questionnaire 1. And Acorn was published in 2013. Questionnaire 1. Check the following statements. True, false. 1. All streets are invisible. The visible ones are fake ones, though some visible ones are the end parts of the invisible ones. 2. If you wear something long enough, it becomes part of you, and you suffer from serious physical maladjustment when you take it off. A woman died from taking off her ring she wore for 10 years. A man was found to be non-existent when his title was taken away. 3. When you leave things, you leave your spirit behind as well. But if you don't leave them, you age. 4. Your brother is the man you killed in the past world. He was born in your family because he wanted to be near you. 5. There are 1,000 suns rising every day. We only see one of them because of our fixation on monolithic thinking. 6. Grapefruit is a hybrid of lemon and orange. Snow is a hybrid of wish and lament. And now I'd like to share a new piece. It's very new, so new, in fact, that I was still working on it this morning. And I'd like to screen share it so you can see it. Right. Okay. And okay, can everyone see that? Mm-hmm. Okay. It's entitled Grapefruit. Grapefruit. I ate a grapefruit every day for a year. My husband is allergic to grapefruit. Since my surgery, I examined 3 scars on this distended abdomen, 1 above my belly button, 2 longer incisions to the right and left, wingspan of a sparrow. My ovarian cyst was the size of a grapefruit. In 1964, Grapefruit, a book of instruction and drawings by Yoko Ono, was originally published in a limited edition of 500 by Wunternam Press in Tokyo. I have my post-op with my surgeon and notice he has shaved his 3-inch beard since I first met him in pre-op. Lying on the surgical table, heated blanket across my body, I remember him holding the complete dramatic works of Samuel Beckett, which I found both comforting and alarming. I wonder why tumors are compared to the size of food items. On a medical website, I read, common food items that can be used to show tumor size in centimeters include a pea, 1 centimeter, a peanut, 2 centimeters, a grape, 3 centimeters, a walnut, 4 centimeters, a lime, 5 centimeters, an egg, 6 centimeters, a peach, 7 centimeters, and a grapefruit, 10 centimeters. In junior high, my friend Jack said, as if it were fact, if it weren't for Yoko, the Beatles would still be together. I felt insulted, being Asian American, a girl, a Beatles devotee, and a few years later a die-hard Yoko fan. Yet I remained silent. Cut piece from Grapefruit. Cut. This piece was performed in Kyoto, Tokyo, New York, and London. It is usually performed by Yoko Ono coming on the stage and in a sitting position, placing a pair of scissors in front of her and asking the audience to come up on the stage one by one and cut a portion of her clothing, anywhere they like, and take it. The performer, however, does not have to be a woman. This morning I check my wingspan in the mirror, layers of healing, a disappeared bruise. Laurel gave me a grapefruit, and I sliced it. Thank you. And so I'm going to read a piece that is from a storage unit for the Spirit House. Spirit House 4. Sibling follows sibling into thorn forest. Girl holds stick of incense, tip aglow. 37 gnats await atop Mount Popa. Volcanic relics, sister brother, blue-throated barbets. Lightning clue, nest lands on soft earth, entwined vines. Distant blaze, candlewick floating in bowl of oil. And thank you. This is my second to last poem, which is also a new one and part of a series called Thought Logs. Thought Log 21. She dreamt that we were wearing matching pinafores and attending an event that started with the letter M. 3 of my close friends have fallen in the last 3 weeks. A group of devoted volunteers are knitting below the skin of my abdomen. Kerfuffle, skedaddle, paradiddle. I am mastering the art of doing nothing. The ovarian cyst was defrosted for the biopsy. Cinnabar, Carmen, Cordovan. Establish balance while in the ether. 2 children hawk objects on the lawn. Wild daisies, toothpicks wetly painted, a neck brace. We are 100% committed to hope at this moment. Myometrium, endometrium. I pointed my flashlight toward the charms. Drill down into metaphor making. King Dong, lemon Oreos, unwashed scrubs. Cutie thunderstomp upstairs amuses us. How do we allow ourselves back inside? And I'd like to end with this short poem and true story. I was with my friend Mark, who is here today with us, and the title is On Meeting Yoko Ono for the First Time. I cannot speak. You hold your right hand up and say hello. Hello. Then I do the same. Hello. You walk 5 feet away and turn around. You hold your left hand up and say goodbye. Goodbye. And I do the same. Goodbye. Thank you. And thank you so much, everyone. And now I'd like to introduce Lillian.
Thank you so much, Ma. Dawn. I can just sit here and listen to you for a lot longer. Thank you, both of you. And thank you to Mary and Elizabeth for hosting us. I would like to introduce my muse as Wakako Yamauchi, who is perhaps best known for her play And the Soul Shall Dance. She was born in the 1920s, passed recently in her 90s, and I'm reading from a book of short stories that she wrote in her 70s and 80s. I'll read 3 paragraphs to introduce her. This is her collection, Rosebud and Other Stories. Wakako Yamauchi. When I was a little girl, my father bought a set of the Book of Knowledge, which was 20 fat books, very much like the encyclopedia. I pored over pictures of great men and mysterious drawings of fossil bones that lay buried under our very feet, and classic paintings and illustrations of famous stories and poems. I couldn't read English, but I was eager to go to school and find the key that would open up the secrets of these books. When I did learn to read, I thought of writers as unapproachably brilliant, and if I entertained thoughts of one day writing, it was buried way down deep. I thought it took years of study to be a writer, and I thought I was too lazy for that. It was much later that I found almost anyone can write. What is important is to have a love of words and a story you want to tell, a statement you want to make, and an intense and passionate need to tell it, and to write it in a way that readers can say, "Ah, I know that feeling well." I'd like to read a piece of a short, a little bit longer than a flash fiction, called Tilapia, that was published in South Dakota Review. And I wrote this for my grandmother, who was born on the island of Moria, which is across the waters from the island of Tahiti, and who is one of my muses too. Tilapia. The green light and the dampness, who remembers in the end? The green smell was there in Moria where I was born, a smell that came from a deep, deep place. Later, they said that I prayed there by the clear water flowing to the dark blue without end, past voices and dreams and thoughts. This is where I wanted to stay. You can pray like water always flowing. You can pray like the moment when the night begins, when the wind holds its breath and the sea is glass, black and endless. Ripples come and waves, but in the end is the dark brightness, the surface flowing and still. Across the water, the turtles lived in the garden in Papiari in Tahiti. Papiari, the king of the waters. It seemed to rain every day, in the afternoon, at night, or early in the morning when the fishermen woke. The turtles were there when I was a girl. Their dry helmet faces were sleeping. Their dreams were long. My parents and I came to Papiari to visit my eldest sister. Her husband was the tofu maker, and they had a basin, a square-shaped pool in their garden where the tilapia swam. Some of the tilapia were red, but most were black. I sat on the cement edge to watch the tilapia beneath the water. "Will you bless my fish?" my sister asked, but I said nothing. "Stretch out your hand and bless my fish," she said again. "You listen to gossip," I replied. The morning we left for the ferry back to Moria, my sister gave me an aluminum pail. 5 tilapia swam inside, 4 black and 1 red. My sister was taller than me, and I stood on tiptoe to embrace her when we left. "The fish will multiply," she said. On the ferry, two women laid out red peppers on the benches to dry. The fish would grow, they said. The fish would be good to eat. I was sick on the ride to Moria, the boat rocking from side to side with the deep blue waves. I threw up in a bucket, the sickening smell. When would it end? Soon we would arrive, the two women said, but the waves were rough and the journey slow. When we reached the land, my father carried the pail, the tilapia still swimming inside. I felt too light to walk. Everyone feels better once they arrive, my father said. That night, my mother brought me a bowl of rice porridge with dried shrimp. My father put the tilapia in a wash basin outside the back door, and there, as the months passed, they grew and multiplied as my sister had promised. Most of the tilapia were black, but 2 or 3 were red. Some of the black tilapia were marked with a red stripe near the top fin, the line waving through the water as they passed. I drew this wave on the sand by the sea. With a stick, I drew the winding line, and then another line and another. I sat at the end of the lines, looking at the pattern. I closed my eyes and sat for a long time. I wore a hat with a large brim so that I could sit in the sun without moving and not be disturbed. There were so many tilapia that my mother began to cook them at dinner. These fish usually taste muddy, my father said, but the tilapia in the wash basin were special and refined. His friends told him that I, his youngest daughter, was strange. Her fish are better than the ones you raised, he told them back. At night, I heard my father laughing with his friends. Strange, strange, they said when they spoke about me. Strange, strange. But it was rare that they spoke of me at all. Click, click when the mahjong tiles, the neat, busy sound of them on the table. My father and my brother built a pond of blue tiles for the fish. There I liked to sit, with the smell of the Viatoni mango tree that grew near the pond, the smell of the water beneath the earth. Stretch out your hand, my sister had said. Stretch out your hand and bless my fish. From my fingers against the tiles, I felt the fish, the trembling of the water flowing as they turned. Through the water they swam, the pattern rippling through the depths to the surface above, the pattern ever changing. They died one day. Their bodies floated, revealing their white bellies. I cried and my father drew them out with a net. I had changed the water the day before, as I had done so many times, with an old red hose until the water grew shallow and the fish splashed as they swam. The new water had foamed strangely as I had filled the pond, the only sign that something was wrong. The next morning, the tilapia were dead. I cried and cried. I could not stop crying. I sat by the empty pond, the surface with the clouds in the sky. Nothing flowed in the water. The motion had died, leaving the mirror of white clouds and blue. I stopped visiting the pond. The new year was coming, and with it, the visit of my sister arriving from Papiari. On the new year, we would eat no meat, only the tofu that my sister brought in pails of cool water. It was not the season for mangoes, but I walked through the garden to the Viatoni tree, the mangoes that my sister loved. I passed by the pond, and the surface rippled. The mosquito larvae grown too numerous, I thought. I drew closer, and the surface turned still. I waited, looking at nothing, and then they appeared. Tiny, dark fish, clouds and clouds. As the weeks passed, the tilapia grew, filling the water. Again, the surface trembled as they turned. They were black. No red tilapia remained, but sometimes, if I waited long enough, a bright line appeared, a secret mark, a red wave flashing, disappearing beneath the dark, like thoughts, like dreams. Thank you.
Amen.
Wow. Thank you, Lillian. Thank you to all of our readers. That was tremendous, just a tremendous reading. I'm still thinking of all the imagery. It's going through my mind. I would love to know, we were talking when we were organizing this reading, what are we going to organize it around? And the notion of the muse just seemed to pulse between all of us. I'd love to know more about your conception of the muse, even knowing that on the 22nd, all three of these artists are going to be back online for a workshop that I've just put in the chat. But what does it take to be or discover a muse? Where do you discover these people for yourselves and in your art? Yeah, that's my question to start us off. And then if you have questions, please put them in the chat or pipe in when the opportunity presents itself.
I can jump in. Mary, your question is, where do we find our muses and inspirations? I just feel like for me, I find inspiration and muses just not only, writers, but painters, filmmakers, foods, colors, friendships, relationships. And, one of the things that I like to do personally is keep a list of my muses and inspirations. And when I'm feeling that I maybe perhaps feel like a little stuck, I might look at a painting by one of my muses, Mark Dutcher, who's here, whose painting is here, and so many visual artists. I collect art and music is definitely a muse and inspiration for me. When I write, I listen to music, and I don't know, I just feel like we're so lucky and blessed to have people who've been creating for years, and to have so many inspirations around us. So those are my thoughts about muses and inspirations.
I'd just like to say that the path of the poet and the writer is often a very solitary path, and it's not always easy. And muses are really essential. I'm very grateful to Wakako Yamauchi. I had the great honor of editing her works, and she was at that time in her 80s, and she would sometimes, I would show her a little bit of what I was working on, and she would say things like, I want to feel the sensuality here, more sex. There's not enough sex scenes in your work, and that was just so great for me, because I was raised to be just like very you didn't talk about sex when I was growing up, especially not among your elders. Never. You didn't even dare to think about such things. And so Wakako she was great. She would point to my manuscript and say, you see here, this is where you could put a sex scene in here. I'm so indebted to her. Just so many people that I'm thankful for. I'm thankful to my family, many of whom are here in the audience, and to my friends, I see members of my writing group. I belong to two, and my writing group collective, the 17 Syllables, are here. I'm very, very grateful to them. I do also want to echo a little bit what Ma was saying very early on. A poet, Erwin Rosen, who worked in San Quentin, told me that when you are in one form of art, like writing, look to other forms of art, like painting or music, to rest and turn to that when you need a rest, or when you feel like you're running out of ideas. Don't think you're running out of ideas, just turn to something else. like painting or like listen to music. And I have found that advice to be invaluable.
Lillian, while you're talking, Elizabeth had a question too about that. She's curious about how editing Yamauchi has impacted you creatively. I mean, you said that she's tactfully or directly edited you, but what about the process of editing her? How has that informed you? And has it changed your writing? And anyone else too?
Oh, yes, yes. It really did. It was very powerful. She has since passed in her 90s, but she was mainly a playwright. And one thing that was very powerful to me was to go, because I was editing drafts of one play that she was working on, as well as her short stories. But there would be readings of different, at different stages. There would be actors from East-West Players and different other actors would come in and read. And since I was editing the work, I by then pretty much knew the play by heart. But when the actors would read, I mean, they were very fine actors, but when the actors would read, it breathed life into them, into the words. And that made me realize that words are not, I mean, I think solitude and silence is really essential for the writer and the poet. But to balance that out, to hear words being spoken and to be reminded that, there's breath in these words, that was really essential to me. And Wakako was also saying that she was telling me also, because at the beginning, I think when I started out, I kind of wanted to, impress people with how I could write. And, she would say, do people really speak like this? And I would read her works and realize that she was capturing how people actually speak, not how I wanted them to speak, not this kind of idea of English, but how people really spoke. And that was deeply influential to me, to try to capture how things were, rather than imposing my idea on some sort of idea of how people speak. And that filtered through into how I view writing and art.
Oh, thank you for that. Dawn, what do you think?
Yeah, I was just gonna share that for to go back to the question about like discovering a muse. I am originally from the East Coast. I never thought I would leave, but when I got introduced to dictée, I really loved all of the travel and places that I had been able to discover through a book, because it does follow, it follows a lot of journeys between the US, Hawaii, Korea, Manchuria. It really like takes you all around. And so I feel like since I got introduced to dictée, I feel like a lot of my like major life choices have been based on trying to follow Teresa Chaw's like world around. So that's how I ended up applying to a Fulbright in South Korea. I really wanted to get placed in her hometown in Busan. I made it pretty much a point to try and visit like anything she ever referenced in that book. So that was cities, that was monuments. And then when I came back to the US, I was like, I'm ready for a new adventure. Like, thought I would always stay where I live. But then the opportunity came for me to move out to the Bay Area for a job. And I decided like I would go for it since I had just like this draw to the Bay Area since then. And I think a lot of also the way that she structures her books, she was a filmmaker and a performance artist first and foremost, and a visual artist. So she was not necessarily known as like a poet or a writer. And I am a dancer myself, and I make collages and stuff. So I feel like I find a lot of inspiration from arranging things physically, and also like through the body and movement. So I found that I get a lot of like, I guess, energy from different types of art. And then my other muse, which I was talking about with Maw, Lillian, and Mary when we were planning this event, I really love to ride like public transit and specifically trains. So I find on train journeys, like if they're really long, like I took an Amtrak from Oakland up and down the Pacific Northwest. Like I just got so much writing done on that, like 50 pages of writing done. And I find that's really nice to see like other people and how they interact on trains when you're not really, you're in the same space for a while, but you don't actually get to know them. So I love the observation. I also love seeing just the scenery and how that influences a place. So that's kind of where, I follow Teresa Shaw around.
Sorry, I wondered too, so Lillian, you're trained as a lawyer, right? You've got a law degree.
Yes, I
Mom
do.
is teacher, and Dawn, you don't do poetry. So how does your paid gig influence your art, or does it? Is it a hindrance? Is it a help?
Hold on, and I also just want to say that I think Ronald has had a hand.
Oh, Ron,
also.
hi, Ron.
But go ahead. Yes, I don't want to interrupt too much, but I do want to recognize that.
Thank you.
Yes, you answered a great deal of my questions, but I'm going to ask them anyway. And that is, I saw Amanda Gorman, the inauguration poet, interviewed before she released her last poetry. And the interviewer asked her what was her method or methodology. And she said she first goes back to history. And so in her latest poems dealing with the pandemic, she went back to the 1918 influenza and then worked her way all the way up to Black Lives Matter, to George Floyd, and to the pandemic of this time. Coupled with that is your methodology and your methods, the three poets here. And also Adele, the great singer. Oprah was surprised when she said she didn't know where she got all of her stuff from, her creativity. And it seemed like Oprah was surprised at that. You mean you don't know how to access that? No, she said, I don't know. It just comes from where I don't know. So I guess you've answered a little bit about the muse is some of your sources, but the twofold question is, do you have a method and methodology, and how you access your creative juices, you might say?
Well, I can try to answer that question, Ronald. That's a great question, and also answer yours too, Mary. Yeah, I'm a teacher, a full-time teacher, and as you can imagine, it's a lot of work. But one of the things I try to do to, create poetry, work on my writing, and at the same time, juggle all my classes that I have is sometimes when I'm teaching or support teaching, I keep separate notebooks. So one notebook is just a notebook of notes and associations. So, say I'm listening to some lectures. One of my jobs at my school is that I take 3-hour lectures and synthesize them into 1-hour lectures. I am really attracted to the language of the different arts, like whether it's graphic design or architecture or et cetera, et cetera. And so those fragments and the language will make their way into my notebook. But at the same time, I'm taking notes. Fortunately, I write really quickly, and I'll go back and I have you can ask Tom, my husband, who's here. I have hundreds of notebooks. And so I think a big part of my process, while at the same time, teaching, is to just take copious notes and then go through them later. And then, I might have some ideas and just kind of go through those pages and work from there. That's a great question. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
I do something similar with my notebooks where in the back it's like creative stuff or like random financial notes, but then the front of it is like my day-to-day job. And just to kind of answer that question, Mary, for everyone's context, I taught for like 2 years and then I became a recruiter, which neither of those things deal with doing poetry kind of full time. And I do think that has given me kind of like comfort and access though to take a lot of classes. And I do get a lot of like I feel like I get a lot of snippets when I go to readings like this, and I write them down, and maybe there's a phrase that really inspires me, and then I might always like kind of communicate with another writer in that way. And I also always, like, if I look through my my notes section on my phone, there's always like gems there that I have been saving since like for like 10 years. So sometimes like I'll go back and be like, oh, this line that like I wrote randomly, I don't remember the context. I can pick it up like years later. So I've definitely done that when I feel a little stuck with my writing.
Could I ask then again with that, do you, all of you have any writer's block? Does it come to you often, or does it come to you at all?
Not for me, honestly. I feel like there's always a lot to write about.
I think there's always fallow times. I just came out of a Jungian class in which she was talking about the times, right, what I would probably call a writer's block, but that she was thinking of, the teacher was talking about fallow, the earth has to renew itself, and it is the same with the creative process. There are times, I think, because I raised a family and had long years in which the times in which I could write were very, very limited. So I didn't experience it perhaps to the extent writer's block, because my time was always so very limited in which I could write. I've often envied, writers who could, I knew one writer who was going to a lot of residencies, and he would tell me that, sometimes he got writer's block, and it almost seemed like a luxury to me to get a writer's block, and that I think that for me, trying to write even when I don't feel like I'm writing anything very good, like even if it's just an hour a day, helps. And I also want to say, maybe on a different sort of tangent, that there's National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, in November, and I've participated in that about 6 times and completed it 5 times. And it's something in which one writes a certain number, you have to reach 50,000 words at the end of the month. So there's no way to do that if one is, heavily editing or even lightly editing. So it turns off that editing voice and forces one to just keep writing, even though I always feel like I'm writing just a lot of garbage. But gems come out of that. That when I turn off that editorial voice. There's also 1,000 Words of Summer. I think Jamie Attenberg does that. Just these little, being in a group where one has to write a lot every day, and that shuts down the the self-editing and the self-criticizing, and forces me to write. I think that's been a very essential practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'd like to quickly add that one of the things that's really helped so much during these pandemic times, I have like 3 or 4 writing partners, and we meet early in the morning on Zoom, and we talk for a little bit, drinking our coffee, and then we write for sometimes 45 minutes, 50 minutes, and then we say, okay, goodbye. And so that even if we don't share, sometimes we share, having that experience of just, seeing my friend's face on the screen and writing together has been really helpful. So that's something that I've been doing a lot more.
Looks like we have time for one more question before our hour is up. I'm going to put again here the program for the day, which also has upcoming events, including our next event, reading series event on May 13th, which features poet and pastor Elizabeth Robinson, and benefits an organization called Feet Forward, which is an organization founded by and run by a formerly unhoused woman who now helps other people find housing. It's a tremendous organization. And also, again, on the 22nd of this month, we will have a workshop, very much worth your time. It's 1 to 3, and these lovely and wise women will be with us to guide us through to discover our own muses. Is there any other questions?
I just want to quickly mention, I really like the question of the muse, and Maw is definitely my muse. Fantastic poet. I've learned so much from Maw over the years. I'm an instructor at Academy of Art, and just the way Maw presents language, there's so much power in each word and how it's presented on the page, and also how it's spoken, how Maw presents it, performs it. It's so wonderfully powerful and impactful. So I really have learned so much from Maw and Maw's poetry. And so such a great question. And then I also think of my godmother, who wrote about Walt Whitman and Emily Dickinson, was an accomplished poet who passed away. Let's see here. And also just, writing about my childhood, studying dance. Dawn mentioned dance and ballet, and I studied ballet. And so I love writing about dance. And what else? Oh, French poets, I like Baudelaire, and I've read, I like Virginia Woolf, but I think just the muse is also just our experiences and people that we love, and just writing about. I like to mention of the interdisciplinary Maw's poetry. I think every wonderful work of her today, Lillian Howan, Dawn, Angelica Barcelona, the multidisciplinary from, taking from my dance training, and I love music as well. Maw mentioned music, Yoko Ono. And so, yeah, just love that multidisciplinary, and also the whole writer's block, silencing the inner critic. Sometimes I just write for just the joy of it, not worrying about the grammar, the spelling, get into the sense of play. And based on a book I've been reading, Keith Sawyer, 8 Steps of Creativity, Zigzag. It's called Zigzag, The Surprising Path to Greater Creativity. So anyway, I think it's just sometimes, wanting it to be perfect, or wanting it to be just like this, or just, just kind of expressing your feelings on just how you feel. Anyway.
This is I love this, Sibylline, thank you. I think a great way to end would be to put in the chat just a whole list of our collective muses. And if you see someone on that list that you think grab and hold on to as your own, it would be a lovely way. And I will save the chat, and I will send out this list to anyone who's registered, so that you will have it, and again we can use it again. So while we do that, we can chat and hang out after, but I want to give a heartfelt thanks to all 3 of our readers. You can take your mute off and clap loud. You can do the emoji clapping, however you so choose. But I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
It has been wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Have a good week coming up. I hope you're inspired to write, even in the cracks of your day, which is all some of us have right now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you,
Everybody, for attending. Hi, Carolyn. Hi, Grace. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Mary and Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Thank you,
Yeah,
Elizabeth.
thank you.
Dawn and Maw,
This
you
was great.
two are great.
Thank you.
So great to see you, Lynn.
Oh, good to see you, Mom. And thank you all. Wonderful reading. I'm just starved for that out where I live. It's just heaven. Thank you.
Let's have a writing
Join
day
us.
together.
We're every month. We're here every month. We'd love to have you, Lynn.
Oh, thank you. I'll be here. Thank you.
Right.
And thank you, Mariana. Mariana is just a fabulous writer.
Yes,
Thank you, Mariana. Aw.
Thank you, Anne, also. I see Anne is here too. Anne is also a writer I greatly admire.
Oh.
And I'm writing names down.
Thank you.
Whoever wrote down Octavia Butler, I'm saying amen.
Right?
Yeah.
She's prophetic, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was wondering, Lillian, the grandmother in the Charm Buyers.
Oh
is-
yes, the great
the
grandmother.
Grandmother, yeah. She had the tilapia in that first chapter. There's
Yes,
fish
she
in that
did.
first chapter. It's like,
She
oh.
did. Yes. Tilapia is fairly, yes, it's in Tahiti. There's my grandfather had a tilapia pond, and yes, those fish do thrive there, but they also do die suddenly. And I think there's something mysterious about tilapia.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought it, and I was reading today. I'm going to get a hard copy because I like to read hard copies of books, especially when I start reading a book and realize, oh, no, I need to read this book. I don't just need to consume this book.
Thank you so much, Mary. That means a great deal to me. Thank you.
Your book has meant a great deal to me in the short time I've had to spend with it. So I hope to continue this conversation somehow, some way.
Yes.
I'll buy coffee or food or anything.
Oh, please, I'd be greatly honored.
Are you in the Bay Area? Oh, I guess I am.
I am.
Sorry, I'll stop agreeing.
No, I'm here in Berkeley,